My mom told me birthdays were a waste of money. My brother said I was too old to care. But then, my daughter stood on a table, looked everyone in the eye, and said something I will never forget. I didn't grow up in the kind of house where birthdays meant balloons and cake and loud singing. In my family, you were lucky if someone even remembered the date. And even if they did, the response was something like, "Oh, that's today, huh?" I got used to it. Stopped expecting anything. You kind of learn to silence those little hopes after a while, you know? You learn to tell yourself it's not a big deal, that it's just another day. But I never really stopped wanting someone, anyone, to make me feel special. Just once. Let me tell you about my mom, Inez. She's not cruel, not intentionally anyway. She just sees the world in black and white. Emotions, sentiment, that's weakness in her eyes. She grew up poor and proud, and she carries that pride like armor. Once, when I was 10, I asked if we could bake cupcakes for my birthday. I even found this magazine clipping with rainbow frosting and sparkles. She looked at it for a second and said, "Cupcakes? You eat food every day. You don't need sparkles for that." That's just how she is. Celebrations were a luxury, one we didn't earn. Then there's my brother, Caleb, 2 years older than me and always the loudest one in the room. We were never close. He's the kind of person who thinks vulnerability is a joke. If you cry, he'll say you're being dramatic. If you open up, he'll roll his eyes. He grew up in the same house, but he adapted by mocking everything that hurt. So when I turned 30 and no one even called me, Caleb texted me 3 days later. "Happy belated. You're too old to care anyway, right?" I laughed, but it stung more than I'd admit. Then there's Ilya, my daughter. She's 9 years old and nothing like the rest of us. She was born with this quiet magic, the kind that doesn't need permission to shine. She notices everything, and she remembers. Every missed promise, every smile, every silence. When I had her, I made myself a promise. She will never feel invisible the way I did. I didn't care if I had to work overtime, skip meals, or tape balloons to the wall at midnight. Her birthdays would matter, and this year she wanted a party, a real one. With family. I hesitated. I knew what that meant. I knew who that invited back into our space. "Please, Mama," she said, "I want everyone to be there. I want them to see what I see." I didn't even ask what she meant by that. I just nodded and said yes. The day came. I cleaned every inch of the house. I baked the cake myself, chocolate with that thick, messy frosting Elia loves. I hung up the dollar store banner, inflated every balloon with my own breath, even arranged the folding chairs in a half circle. They arrived one by one. Inez walked in, holding a bag of chips like it was a gift. Caleb came 15 minutes late and asked if there was beer. No one brought a card. No one brought a gift, not even for Ilya. And when I went to light the candles, my mom looked at me and said, "Didn't know we were still doing birthdays at this age." Caleb smirked and added, "She's too old to care." No one sang. They just stared. And I felt myself folding in, like my spine was caving under the weight of being so unseen. But then, just as I was about to blow out the candles alone, there was a sound, a quiet clinking of a spoon against a glass. I looked up. Aaliyah had climbed onto a chair, then onto the table. She stood there, small but fierce, and said, "Excuse me, I need to say something before we cut the cake." It's strange how silence can shape a person. When I was little, I didn't know our house was missing something. It was always quiet. Emotionally, I mean. We talked, sure. We discussed school, chores, groceries, bills. But no one asked how you were really feeling. There were no spontaneous hugs, no bedtime stories, no traditions, just function. Growing up, I thought everyone's home felt like that. I didn't know birthdays could feel different. Joyful, warm, full of people smiling for you. In our house, birthdays were just another day. Maybe a nod, a grunt, a casual, "Oh, right," nothing more. My name is Soraya, and I'm 38 years old. I've spent most of my life trying not to take up space. I didn't cause problems. I didn't ask for much. I learned to expect very little, and I got even less. But I survived. And for a long time, I convinced myself that was enough. Now I'm a single mom to a 9-year-old daughter named Elia, and raising her has been like learning how to breathe again. She's nothing like the people I grew up with. She sings when she brushes her teeth. She leaves notes on the fridge that say, "You're doing amazing, Mama." She hugs like she means it, and when she's happy, she glows. Sometimes I just watch her in disbelief, wondering how she came from me. Her father, well, he left before she turned 3. I don't talk about him much. Not because it hurts, it's just I've learned not to chase people who choose to walk away. I work full-time at a medical billing office. It's not glamorous, but it keeps us afloat. I budget every dollar. I know which stores mark down bread on Tuesdays. I know how to make a $10 meal stretch into 3 nights. Aaliyah never complains. She's grateful for everything. So when she told me she wanted a party this year, her big girl birthday, I knew I had to make it happen, no matter what. She looked at me with those brown eyes and said, "I want it to feel special, Mama. I want it to feel like both of us are being celebrated." I laughed and said, "What do you mean, both of us?" She smiled. "Because you do everything, and you never get a party." That stayed with me. I didn't think she noticed, but she always does. I started planning right away. I used my lunch breaks to browse discount decorations. I saved a little each week to buy cake supplies. I even found a local thrift shop that had a pack of unused birthday hats for $1.75. I got creative, made homemade banners, dug up the folding table from the basement. And then came the harder part. Aaliyah wanted to invite family. My heart sank. Because family for me meant 2 people, my mother, Inez, and my brother, Caleb. We were the leftover remnants of something that never really felt whole. My mom lives 10 minutes away, but I see her maybe once a month, usually when she needs a ride to the pharmacy or wants help with her taxes. We don't fight, we just don't connect. Her voice always has that sharpness to it, like life has been one long disappointment, and she's trying not to let it show. And Caleb, he lives across town with his 3rd girlfriend and a motorcycle he loves more than people. He thinks emotions are useless, calls me too sensitive. He's the kind of guy who jokes about therapy being a scam and uses sarcasm like it's a second language. Inviting them felt risky, but Elia insisted. "They're still family," she said. "Maybe if they come, they'll see." I didn't ask what she meant by that, but I said yes. I cleaned every corner of our house, blew up balloons until my lungs hurt, spelled her name out in construction paper letters and hung them across the window. I even set 2 extra chairs out, just in case. That morning, Aaliyah woke up early. She wore her sparkly purple dress, the one she said made her feel like herself. She twirled in the living room while I frosted the cake, and just before the guests started arriving, she looked at me and whispered, "Today's going to be different." I nodded, not sure I believed it, but I wanted to. God, I wanted to. The party started at 2 p.m. By 1:45, I was wiping down the same kitchen counter for the 3rd time, checking the oven even though nothing was in it, adjusting balloons that didn't need adjusting. I do that when I'm nervous, busy my hands so my mind won't spiral. Aaliyah was in the living room arranging the party favors by color. She kept peeking through the window, asking, "Do you think they'll come?" "I think so," I said, but my stomach was tight. At 2:10, my mom arrived. She walked in like she was stepping into a waiting room. No smile, no gift, just a grocery store bag of chips in one hand and her car keys in the other. "You're late," I said, but gently, playfully. She shrugged. "I came, didn't I?" Elia ran up and hugged her. My mom patted her back like she was checking for crumbs. "Where should I put these?" she asked, holding up the chips. "You can set them on the table," I said. She looked around. "No drinks?" "In the cooler, on the porch." She nodded, unimpressed, and walked off without another word. I exhaled slowly. At 2:27, Caleb showed up. Of course, fashionably late, always making an entrance. He wore sunglasses indoors like he thought he was famous. "Hey, birthday girl," he said to Elia, tossing her hair like she was a puppy. Then he turned to me and said, "Damn, Soraya, you really went all out. Didn't know you were still doing this whole birthday thing." "It's for Elia," I said flatly. He smirked. "Sure, but you hung the banner like you were turning 9. I bit the inside of my cheek and forced a laugh. I wasn't going to ruin this for Elia. By 3 p.m., most of the other guests had arrived, 2 neighbors and Aaliyah's friend from school. They smiled, handed over little gift bags, took plates of cake. The kids played, the grown-ups mingled. My mom sat in the corner on her phone. Caleb leaned against the counter, making small talk with the neighbors like he was hosting. Neither of them had even said happy birthday to me or Elia. I tried not to let it show, but every time I passed by the cake table or refilled the chip bowl, I felt it. That emptiness, that cold wall I'd known all my life pressing closer, even in a house full of voices. And then it happened. I brought out the cake. Aaliyah had helped me make it from scratch, chocolate with peanut butter frosting and little rainbow sprinkles that we arranged together. She wanted 9 candles, 1 for each year, plus 1 for good luck, she said. I placed it on the table. Aaliyah stood beside me, beaming. I clapped my hands. Okay, let's sing. Silence. No one moved. My mom crossed her arms. Are we really doing this singing thing? Caleb laughed. Come on, Soraya, you're pushing 40. You still care about blowing out candles? I looked around the room. A few people smiled awkwardly. No one started the song. Aaliyah's face changed. That glow dimmed a little. I reached for the matches to light the candles anyway, pretending it didn't matter. But it did. God, it did. It mattered that my own mother and brother couldn't give Elia 1 minute of joy, 1 moment of sincerity. I swallowed the lump in my throat and lit the candles one by one. My hands were shaking. My daughter, standing next to me, watched my face carefully. She always knows. When I stepped back to gesture for everyone to sing, my mom muttered, "It just feels unnecessary." And Caleb added, "She's too old to care anyway." They both chuckled. No one else did. And that's when I felt it. That click. That shift. Not rage, not sadness. Clarity. I was done pretending this didn't hurt. I glanced at Elia, expecting her to shrink like I had so many times before. But she didn't. She looked around the room, then climbed onto her chair. Then, onto the table. "Excuse me," she said, tapping a glass with a spoon. Her voice was small but steady. The room went silent. She looked around at everyone, at my mother, my brother, the neighbors. "I need to say something before we cut the cake." My heart stopped. This wasn't part of the plan, and that's when everything changed. At first, I didn't realize what was happening. I just stood there, stunned, as my 9-year-old daughter tapped a spoon gently against a glass like she was about to give a wedding toast. The clinking sound was soft, but it cut through the noise like a blade. Conversation stopped. Chairs shifted. Heads turned. Elia stood tall on the table, her little hands trembling slightly as she held a folded piece of paper. Her sparkly purple dress shimmered under the ceiling light, and her curls bounced slightly as she cleared her throat. "Elia," I said quietly, trying to reach for her. "Sweetheart, what are you—" She held up one finger without looking at me, asking for a moment, not with defiance, but with conviction. "I need to say something," she announced, her voice louder this time, clearer. "Before we cut the cake." No one said a word. Even my mom looked up from her phone. Caleb tilted his head, curious. Everyone froze. And then she started reading. "This party is not just for me, it's for my mom, too." Her voice cracked on that word, mom. And something inside me broke open. "She never got one," Elia continued. "Not when she turned 10 or 20 or 30, not even last year." I felt the air shift in the room. "She always tells me how important it is to make people feel special. She says that birthdays are more than just cake or candles, that they're a chance to show someone that their life matters, that they are seen." She paused and glanced at me. Her eyes were wet. "She gives me a party every year. She makes me feel like the most important person in the world. Even when we don't have a lot, she still finds a way." I tried to blink away the tears building in my eyes. I hadn't known she noticed any of that she remembered. "And I asked her this year if we could invite our family," she said, her gaze moving slowly across the room, "because I thought maybe if they saw her the way I do, they'd understand." You could have heard a pin drop. "She does everything alone. She works hard. She listens when I'm scared. She lets me be weird and funny and loud even when she's tired. She makes me feel safe. She makes me feel loved." Now her hands were shaking, but she kept going. "That's why this party is also for her, because even if no one else ever said it before, she deserves to be celebrated." A quiet sniffle echoed from somewhere in the back of the room. I think it was one of the neighbors. Elia looked straight at me. "Happy birthday, Mama." And then, without hesitation, she began to sing. "Happy birthday to you." Her voice wobbled but kept going. No one joined at first. She sang the whole first line alone, and I could see the hope in her eyes flickering, but she didn't stop. Then one of the kids from her class chimed in, then a neighbor, then a cousin I barely knew from Caleb's side. Bit by bit, a few voices joined her shaky melody. Not all of them, but enough. But not my mother, not Caleb. They just sat there, watching. I didn't care. I was crying now, really crying. I couldn't help it. I had never in my life felt so seen, so called out in the most beautiful way. And I had never felt so protected, because that's what Elia had done. She protected me, publicly, with courage I had never had as a child. She stood in front of the same people who made me feel small and dared to say, "She matters." When the song ended, everyone clapped, and Aaliyah jumped off the table like a superhero. She wrapped her arms around me tight, buried her face in my chest. "Did I mess it up?" she whispered. I couldn't speak. I just held her. She hadn't messed anything up. She'd just made it perfect. And in that moment, I realized something. I had spent my entire life waiting for someone else to rescue me from that empty place. But the person who did was the little girl I gave life to. The person I thought I was saving was the one who ended up saving me. After Aaliyah finished her speech and the last note of happy birthday faded out, there was this long, quiet pause. It wasn't awkward. It was sacred. Like the entire room had collectively realized that something real had just happened, that a little girl had cracked open the silence that had ruled our family for decades and dared to fill it with truth. I looked around the room through watery eyes. Some people couldn't meet my gaze. A few smiled at me, softly, like an apology. Others just looked stunned, like they had witnessed something private that they didn't know how to process. But I wasn't looking for their approval, not anymore. I only cared about one thing, Elia. She was still holding on to me, her arms tight around my waist, like she wasn't sure how I'd take it, like maybe she'd gone too far. She pulled back, searching my face. "Did I embarrass you?" she whispered. I shook my head, unable to speak. I cupped her face and kissed her forehead. She smiled, small and relieved. Then she picked up the knife and said, "Now we cut the cake, right?" That broke the tension. A few people chuckled. Plates were passed out. The room started moving again, but something had shifted. Quietly, invisibly. My mom walked over and stood next to me but didn't say anything. She just stared at the cake like it was an alien object. After a moment, she muttered, "You made this?" "Yes," I said. "Aaliyah helped." She nodded. Then, after a beat, she added, "It's nice." That was it. That was her version of affection. I knew better than to look for more. Caleb, of course, stayed near the back. He didn't come up to me, didn't say a word, just scrolled on his phone between bites of cake. Same old Caleb. But for once, his indifference didn't hurt, because the moment that mattered had already happened. As we sat down to eat, one of Aaliyah's classmates whispered to her, "Your speech was awesome." Aaliyah grinned. "Thanks. I was so nervous I thought I was going to fall off the table." I laughed. "You nailed it." Later, after the guests left, we were sitting on the couch, just the two of us. The streamers were sagging, plates were stacked in the sink, the house smelled like sugar and candles. Aaliyah curled up next to me, her head on my shoulder. She was tired, but still buzzing with pride. I could feel it in the way her hand held onto my sleeve. "You know why I did it, right?" she said. I nodded. "Because you love me." "Well, yeah," she said with a smirk, "but also because I don't think it's fair." "Fair?" I asked. She sat up a little. "That no one ever told you happy birthday. That you do all this stuff for people and no one ever makes you feel special. I think that's mean." I felt a lump rise in my throat again. She continued, "And I didn't want to grow up thinking that's normal. It's not." I looked at her, my little girl with more courage in her tiny frame than I'd ever found in my whole life. And I realized this wasn't just a sweet gesture. It was a declaration, a breaking of a cycle. She wasn't just standing up for me. She was saying, "We don't do that in this house. We don't ignore love. We don't pretend silence is strength. We show up for each other." I pulled her close and held her tighter than I had all day. "Thank you," I whispered. "You're welcome," she whispered back. "Happy birthday, Mama." And it really was, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible on my own birthday. I wasn't the afterthought. I wasn't the one waiting quietly in the background, pretending it didn't matter. I mattered. And not because someone handed me a card or bought me a cake, but because a 9-year-old girl stood on a table and demanded the world see me. And someone did. She did. And now, I could finally start seeing myself. That night, after Elia fell asleep in her party dress with icing on her cheek and glitter in her hair, I stood in the kitchen alone staring at the leftover cake. Half of it was untouched. The frosting was a little smudged where someone had dropped a napkin onto the corner. There were crumpled plates, forgotten cups, a lone balloon bobbing against the ceiling fan, and in all of that mess, I felt something new: peace. It was quiet, but not the kind of silence I grew up with. This was different. This was the kind of silence that follows a truth finally spoken out loud. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm, when you know something has shifted and can never go back to what it was. For most of my life, I'd been trying to earn something I never got: recognition, warmth, validation. I thought if I stayed small and polite, if I didn't ask for too much, someone might eventually notice me, might finally say, "You matter." They never did. And maybe they never will. But standing in that kitchen, I realized it didn't matter anymore. Because I wasn't that little girl waiting at the edge of the table anymore. I was a woman, raising a daughter, who refused to let me be invisible. The next morning, I woke up early. The house was still. Aaliyah was curled up like a cat in her bed, a stack of gift bags by her side. I let her sleep. I walked into the kitchen, opened a drawer, and pulled out a single tea light candle. I placed it on a small plate, lit it, and sat down at the table with a cup of coffee. No one else was awake. No one else was watching. But I sang. Softly. Just for me. "Happy birthday to you." I didn't even make it through the whole song before I started crying. Not because I was sad, because I finally meant it. I finally believed I was worth celebrating, even if it was just me and that flickering little candle. Later that day, I got a text from Caleb. It said, "Didn't know Elia was going to call us out like that? Damn, she's got guts. Tell her I said happy birthday." I stared at the message for a while before replying, "She gets it from me." He didn't respond. But that was okay. I didn't need him to. I don't expect my family to change overnight. I don't expect my mom to suddenly throw me a party or apologize for the years she called birthdays a waste. I've accepted that some people will always stay exactly who they are. But that doesn't mean I have to stay the same. That doesn't mean I have to pass down what was passed to me. Because Elia taught me something that day. She showed me that the cycle doesn't break itself. It takes someone standing up, standing on the table if necessary, and saying, "This isn't good enough anymore." I used to think birthdays were just fluff. I told myself they didn't matter so I wouldn't feel the sting of being forgotten. But they do matter. Celebrating someone's life, saying out loud, "I'm glad you're here," it matters. And I don't care if I'm 39 or 59 or 89, I'm never going to let another year go by pretending it doesn't. A few days after the party, I picked Elia up from school. She got in the car, plopped into the seat, and said, "Are we doing cake again next year?" I laughed. "Of course we are." She grinned. "Can it be for both of us again?" I nodded. "Every year." And I meant it. Because the little girl who gave me my first real birthday gave me something else, too. She gave me permission to take up space, to be seen, to be celebrated. And from now on, I will be, even if I have to light the candle myself. So yeah. That's the story of how my daughter stood on a table, called out my entire family, and gave me the first birthday I've ever truly had. If you've ever felt unseen, uncelebrated, or like your presence didn't matter, please hear me when I say this. You do matter. You don't need permission from your family to start honoring yourself. And sometimes, the love you've been waiting for, you already gave it to someone else. And one day, it might come back in ways you never imagined. If this story moved you, made you think of someone, or reminded you of your own strength, Please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment below, and tell me your story. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe. There's so much more I want to share with you. Thanks for listening. And if no one else has said it today, I'm glad you're here. You matter. I'll see you in the next video.